Let's start with mixing the instrumental, and let's start with the bass. The bass is always on top. This is the first instrument in my template, and I like to do that because then I can really have a clear visual of what my kick and my bass are doing, and if I need to automate anything in the bass to make space for the kick, I can really easily do that. So that's why my bass is on top, and then I've got my drums. A lot of people do that the other way around, but I don't. So I've got a Moog bass and a Juno bass, and the Moog bass is mainly prominent in the verses and in the pre and in the hook. The Juno bass is the most prominent and leading bass sound, and then the Moog bass doubles that bass as well. Let's start with the hook over here, and then let's start with the Juno bass. I've got the Juno bass, the original, and then I duplicated it as well, but I'll show you in a sec why I duplicated it. Right, the first plugin on there is the Neve 1073, and I always try this plugin by UAD first, and if that doesn't work, I'll go out of the box into my actual hardware 1073s, but this worked perfectly fine. I am adding some gain on the line input, just 5 dB, and then I'm taking down the output fader by 5 dB. So we keep the gain staging the same, but we are gaining a little bit of level and harmonics. The EQ I didn't touch at all because it apparently didn't need it, but let's have a listen to the before and after of that. So you can hear that there's not that much of a change, but it just works slightly better on smaller speaker systems. Then I'm carving out some low mids over here with the Pro Q3 310 Hertz, just to emphasize the lows and the high mids so it pops out more. This is a trick I often do on basses just to make it feel a bit more scooped, a bit more focused towards the low end and the high mids, so it comes through a bit more. So you notice that without having to add any frequencies, by cutting this, I can just take out a bit of that boxiness and let the rest shine a bit more. After that, I've got my favorite compressor for basses, the Summit Audio TLA 100. It is an optical tube compressor. You've got gain reduction over here and gain over here, just like an LA2A, for example. But what the LA2A doesn't have is attack and release settings. So it's not variable, but it's stepped attack and release. So we've got fast, medium, and slow, and release has those parameters as well. And today I'm going slow for the attack because I really want to emphasize the transient and emphasize the body of the bass, and then because it's just a synth bass, it's laying down pretty long notes, so that's why I'm using a medium release instead of a fast release. What's also really nice about this is that it has a saturation dial, and it's normally set to 12 o'clock, so I've pushed that a little bit further than it was on by default. Also helps in making it stand out a bit better on smaller systems and getting that mid-range to poke through a bit more. It's not doing that much gain reduction. It's there for tone and texture, not to control the level of the bass. Then the decapitator, of course, I cannot do a mix without the decapitator. You probably already noticed. It's on the E setting, and as we know, the E setting is more focused towards the low end and a bit more towards the high end, and scoops a bit of the mids out, so that is perfect for bass. It has a drive of 3, and the mix is not set all the way wet, so it's like 80% or something. Let's hear it before and after. really fills it up. That low end really shines now, and the high mids really poke through. I'm not doing crazy big steps over here. It's really, the source material is already pretty great, so I just need to add on to that and make sure everything works together. And then next up on this chain is the Pultec EQP1A. I'm doing what I usually do, and I'm pushing up some of the sub at 30 hertz and then attenuating in the mids as well, so that boost becomes a bit more exaggerated. And then I'm boosting a bit of 3K to get that high mid growl really through on smaller systems and through this dense mix. And then lastly, I am using the track spacer by Waves Factory to duck the bass when the kick comes in. So this is basically sidechain compression, but then in a dynamic EQ way, sort of. It analyzes what frequency your sidechain info is most prominent at, and it ducks that down in the source that has the track spacer on it. So let me quickly set up all the auxes on the kick so we have a decent kick, and then we can see what the track spacer is doing over there. So you can see that every time the kick hits, this track spacer ducks the bass signal in the low end, but also in the high mids where the click in the attack of the kick is. So that really helps if you did all the carving already with EQing and everything to actually make a little bit of extra room for that kick when it needs to, because we can take out a lot of 60 hertz for that low end of the kick, but if we do that throughout the entire track, then maybe the bass becomes too light. So then stuff like track spacer is a really good option. And something that track spacer doesn't do by default, which I like to do, is set the attack to fastest, because I think it's somewhere around here, around 5 milliseconds or something. That's just too slow for me for a kick. So for vocals that could be fine, but for a kick I needed to duck away immediately, and the release I usually just leave as is. And then on the sends, I'm sending a little bit of the bass to the drum parallel, but I'll get back to that later. When we're mixing drums, I'll show you the drum parallel, and then I'll show you what the bass is doing there as well.